Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Heidenreich, and welcome to our webinar today, Building Peace in Difficult Times, Learning from Global Activists. My name is Sarah Heidenreich, and I am the North American Regional Coordinator for the United Religions Initiative, and I'm going to be your moderator today. Thank you for joining us. Before we get started, I just want to do a couple of housekeeping items, let you know who we are here. This is the United Religions Initiative is hosting this webinar. URI is a global grassroots interfaith peace-building network with over 800 cooperation circles in 99 countries, and more are being added every month. I am the regional coordinator for our work in North America, which for our administrative purposes is the US and Canada. And these dots that you see here on the map are our members scattered across the continent, or the northern part of it. Mexico is covered by our Latin America staff. And we are hosting this webinar today because we support peace building work that's happening across the United States and across the world. And we're in a new era here in the United States. Many peace builders are feeling that there's been a shift in the environment. We're facing a lot of new social, cultural, political issues that a lot of us haven't faced before. And so as we were considering this and how we could support people, we realized that as a global network, we have friends and family and allies who have been doing this work in climates that are different than ours for a long time, and we started to consider what we could learn from them. And so often as North Americans, we think of ourselves as the teacher and as the one who goes somewhere else to teach people something. And we also really wanted to flip that narrative and give us a chance to learn from people outside of North America and place ourselves in that position as a student. So that's what we're here to do today, and I'm really excited about it. Before we get started officially, I just want to bring us into center a little bit here. I know probably people are coming from crazy days, and depending on what time zone you're in, you may be at the beginning or the end of that day. But as I was thinking about what to share today, there's this quote that I've been mildly obsessed with for a couple of months now. And the quote is, "We belong to each other." And I thought of that as so relevant to what we are doing here today, because we're really examining how all of our lives are interconnected and how we can learn from people all over the globe. So I'd invite us to sit with that quote for a moment in our head and in our hearts. Just take a deep breath and think about what that quote means to you. How does it apply to your work? And then if you would share that in the chat box with us, share who do you belong to? What does it mean to belong to each other? Thanks, everyone. All right, so now that we are here and in center, I would love it if folks started to introduce themselves in the chat box. Tell us where you're joining from and why you're here. You'll also see Maria is translating, her lightning fingers are translating what I'm saying more or less into Spanish. So if you are a Spanish speaker, you can get her translation in the chat box as well. So I'm going to introduce our speakers. I'm doing this alphabetically, so Sergio Arevalo is first. He is joining us from Barcelona, Spain, where he is the youth director for ODIR, an interfaith organization that's also a URI Cooperation Circle member. He's the coordinator of the Night of Religions of Barcelona and Bridge Builders in Barcelona. He's also a contributing writer of the interreligious journal Diálogo. If I'm saying that wrong, sorry. Next, we have Dr. Emmanuel Evorgba, who's joining us from Jos, Nigeria. Dr. Evorgba is also a URI staff person as the West African Regional Coordinator. But as he was introducing himself to the panelists just before this, he introduced himself as a classroom teacher. He has a background in education and has been the headmaster and founder of Creative Minds International Academy in Nigeria. He's also the recipient of the 2014 Unsung Heroes of Compassion Award, and he convenes the annual International Conference on Youth and Interfaith Dialogue in Nigeria. We also have Shinji Marina Tirado from Caracas, Venezuela. Marina is a Zen Buddhist nun and president of the Circle of Cooperation for Dialogue, also a UI cooperation circle in Venezuela. She's also the host of Today Exactly Now, a radio program that is broadcasted online, and there's a link to that in her bio if anyone is interested. Finally, we have Veronica Sartore, who currently lives in, oops, I've got a typo here. She is from Padova, is living in Spain, so not Padova, Spain, German, Italian, but has been living in Barcelona for the past 5 years or so. She's a member of ODIHR, and like Sergio, also works on the Night of Religions organizing team with Bridge Builders of Barcelona, and writes for the interreligious journal Dialogue. And my joke is that Veronica and Sergio are twins. They do a lot of the same things together, and they're often collaborating on projects. So we're glad to have both of them here today. So the next thing we're going to do is move on to our first set of introductions. I've given you sort of their resume, but I want each of our speakers to introduce themselves, and they're going to share about their context. So a little bit more about where you're located in the cooperation circle you work with, and then give us a brief overview of the context you're working in. What is your biggest assets and your biggest difficulties? And I'm going to have Sergio and Veronica speak to this first about your context there in Barcelona.
Okay. So the UNESCO Interfaith Center of Catalonia is located in Barcelona, as you said, and we work in several cities of Catalonia. And I think nowadays our association and the religious communities of Catalonia, we are in a situation of good relation with a political reality. But getting to this point hasn't been easy. 40 years ago, as you know, Spain was a dictatorship, and there was an official faith, the Catholic. The religions weren't allowed to spread themselves in public. So you can imagine interfaith dialogue was impossible. With democracy, it was granted the same rights for all the religious traditions, even if the Catholic Church has some advantages. So the last 20 years, there has been an increase in immigration, especially from South America, Asia, and North Africa. And because of that, we have more religious diversity here. And the last years, we have increased our collaboration with the regional and local governments because they have found that the interfaith dialogue is a way, among other ways, to integrate this new population. But on the other hand, at the same time, our society has become more secular, and a large part of Spanish society sees religion as a negative thing. This is, I think, one of the greatest difficulties that we find in our work. And we have also a problem with Islamophobia, as a part of the population is against Islam, a huge part of the, well, not a huge part, but an important part of the population. So we've come from a very bad situation, but it has improved a lot, even if there is still a lot of work to do.
Yes, so I will continue from here. So I think Sergio explained very well the problems we're facing now, not only in Spain, but all over Europe. We are experiencing now something quite similar than what is going on also in the United States, like a wave of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism and xenophobia in general. And so I think that exactly this sentence that you said before, Sari, we belong to each other, I think it could describe very well what we are actually doing from ODIHR. We are seeing what's going on around us in the world, and we are learning from other people. For example, the project, The Long Night of Religions, comes from Berlin, actually. I mean, this project started in Berlin. It's a day of open doors of religious communities that a circle of various religious communities initiated in Berlin 5 years ago. So they started this day once a year. They religious communities of many religions open their doors to the citizens so that they can, go to temples, synagogues, mosques, and so on, to learn about the different religions that exist in the city. So it's really a very, very interesting image, a very, very interesting example of the variety and diversity that exists in Berlin. And this project is still very, very successful in Berlin. A lot of people participate this day. They go to the various communities to learn about the religions. So we decided to do the same. We first got in touch with the coordinator in Berlin. We learned from them, from their experience, and we started to do exactly the same in Barcelona. And then the project, the Bridge Builders, which is a project with young people of various religions who join forces to do various projects together. So we don't just learn about the different religious traditions, but we also do things together as young people. And we learned this from Argentina. As Maria Eugenia said before, this project started in Argentina for the first time, and then we imported it from Argentina. So I think we can really learn a lot from each other because we have a lot in common. We have a lot of situations to solve together, which is the fact that religion is very unknown. Religions in general are very unknown, are victim of prejudices. And so, well, I would really say that is our interpretation of we belong to each other. And I think that, yeah, that this is our biggest asset, and that, yeah, that's how also we face problems like, being sometimes also afraid of what people like, facing prejudices and facing stereotypes. So I think I have spoken enough already.
Thanks, Veronica. And as you were speaking, the thought that came to my mind is stealing can be holy. You stole from all these other places these ideas, and that is a holy thing that's being used in an incredible way. I want to give, Marina a chance to introduce herself, where she's located, a little bit about your cooperation circle, and about the context in Venezuela. And Maria is going to be translating for Marina.
Okay. Se me cortó un poco lo que dijo Sari.
Marina, cuentes un poquito qué está haciendo el Círculo de Cooperación de Caracas y al mismo tiempo en qué contexto están haciendo este trabajo.
Ok, a ti sí te oigo bien. Bueno, sí, nos reunimos en encuentros interreligiosos, más que todo para tratar de orar por el país. Ahorita hay una situación muy profunda, ahí está en una situación muy grave, política y social.
So we usually gather in interfaith at this moment, especially to pray and to meditate together, because we are facing a very difficult political and social situation in Caracas at this moment. So this is what we are focusing in.
En este instante, ayer, hubo protestas en la ciudad de Caracas y hubo muchos heridos y la situación ahorita está bastante mal porque no hay separación de poderes y eso está afectando mucho a todo el mundo. Eso es lo que está pasando ahora en este instante.
So I'm talking about what is happening really now. Yesterday there was a strike. Because of this, there were a lot of wounded. The tension is very high and very difficult. It's kind of very difficult to deal with it.
Entonces toman presos a los estudiantes, las personas que protestan.
Especially, sorry, Marina. Especially the risk is with young people that they go to protest or strikes and they are taken to jail and they are wounded, and so this is very sad. Especially youth is being people from the universities are being targeted as those to hit.
Sí, los derechos humanos no están respetados aquí.
Human rights are being violated here.
Y además hay mucha violencia e inseguridad en el país. falta de medicamentos y la comida está muy costosa y esto genera mucho miedo e incertidumbre.
So there's a lot of fright and is uncertainty because there is lack of medicine. Food is very expensive. There's a lot of violence, and so this is a real, very difficult situation we are living today in Venezuela.
Sí, hay un deterioro social y moral en donde los valores se han perdido durante estos últimos 18 años.
So there's a social deterioration in which values have been lost in this last years. There's no separation. She said before, sorry, I forgot to say that separation of the different powers of the government is not seen. So this is also a problem there, political problem.
Claro, nosotros nos reunimos y tratamos entre nosotros mismos, bueno, levantar oraciones que no es suficiente y tratar de que cada quien en su comunidad, el círculo de Caracas, el círculo para el diálogo, más que todos somos personas de diferentes religiones.
So the CC of Caracas, we are people of different religions, and what we do is pray, but we know that this is not enough. And we need to take to our communities strength.
Y claro, hemos querido que la gente asista a esas reuniones, lo hemos hecho público.
We have invited other people to come to our prayers. We have done public events.
Pero siempre nos enfrentamos a que la gente en estos momentos hay tantos problemas que sienten que eso no es suficiente y es bien triste porque eso es lo que hay que promover, el desarrollo de toda esa parte espiritual.
So we know that developing the spiritual is important, but people are suffering so much, they feel this is not enough.
Pero bueno, tengo algunas buenas noticias que lo puedo dejar para la segunda pregunta.
So in next, when I'm responding to the questions, I'm going to give you some good news so that you have hope.
Thank you, Marina. I really appreciate it. We're going to go next to Dr. Emmanuel, who you might notice it's a little bit dark in his house. That's because the power is out, and thankfully he has a generator, so he could still join us today, but that's why it's a little bit hard to see his face. And while he introduced himself also, I have a few questions for the panelists, but after we've answered the initial ones, there's going to be an opportunity for audience questions. So please use the chat box and the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen to send us questions that you would like for the panelists to answer in the second half of this. So Emmanuel, I hand it to you to share briefly about the situation in Nigeria and what you're doing there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sari, and everyone for this amazing opportunity. Let me try to be very, very brief. My name is Emmanuel, as Sari said clearly. I try to describe my country, Nigeria, as a nation of nations, because within this nation we have so many other nations. As far back as 1914, before 1914, we were just living as different ethnic nationalities until 1914, when the British amalgamated, that is, brought together the different regions, the southern and the northern protectorates, to make one Nigeria. We have over 300 different ethnic nationalities living within this country. I think in terms of our strength lies in diversity, resilience, determination. But the greatest challenge we have also is that we are really afraid of our strengths, because instead of the diversity becoming a tool for national development, that has become a challenge. So we are confronted with a lot of issues in terms of ethnic rivalries, political issues, interreligious challenges. I'm sure on the international news, you hear a lot about Nigeria now. in terms of the various conflicts and challenges that we have, the issues of Boko Haram, issues of human rights violations, issues of poverty, and so many other challenges. It is really an interesting environment within which to work. The challenges throw up also a lot of opportunities for us to contribute to peace building.
Thank you, Emmanuel. You kept your promise, and you were very brief, but also gave us a really good picture of what is currently happening in Nigeria. We're going to move to our first set of more questions about how you're addressing this context. So, Emmanuel, I'm going to come back to you and ask, can you tell us a story of a time when you were working on a project that was opposed either by the government or by the culture that you're working on, and how did you overcome the obstacles that you encountered? So both what was the project and how did you overcome obstacles?
Two examples come to my mind immediately. Let me start with this. Like when I introduced myself, I said I'm a classroom teacher. And let me give you one example.
Emmanuel, can you just speak that sentence again? Your line broke up while you were speaking. Can you just start from the beginning?
Yeah, I said as a school teacher, I want to give one example from that background. I've worked for many years as a school principal before I resigned to start my own school in 2007 after I traveled to India with Project Happiness. And, you know, here in Africa, this is not only a Nigerian experience, but basically physical or corporal punishment is part of upbringing of children. So when young people go wrong, we not only just counsel them, sometimes we use the cane or the whip to flog them or to whip them. It's part of correction. So in 2010, we started to change that concept, move away from, you know, corporal punishment and, you know, physical flogging of children. And it was something based more on counseling and compassion. And in fact, the resistance we received, even from parents, was amazing because we designed what we call a code of conduct for punishment. And so we had to home and telling their parents, maybe when they did something wrong at home and their parents wanted to flog them, the students would tell them, no, that we are told in school that it is no longer fashionable to flog people. This is the 21st century, and that was no longer acceptable. And so we had a lot of parents coming to school. It was a really very big issue. Parents confronting us that this is not acceptable because their kids started misbehaving at home, and the parents could not flog them at all. So it was a huge challenge. So we had to suspend that for a while and then call what we call, you know, we have this system called the Parents Teachers Association, but we introduced a concept which we call the home school forum to be able to bring the parents to the school and explain to them the idea. Even as I talk to you now, there is still a high level of resistance because this corporal punishment is part of our culture. I've been flogged severally by myself, by my own parents. And when you refuse to flog a child, not bringing them up. So even as I talk, it's very, very difficult to do that. So we keep on trying to explain to parents that the children we are training today will grow up and find themselves in, expose them to what is happening in other places. When they find themselves in those places, it will be very difficult because if you have young people going to places where children are not flogged with the cane, it will look very strange to them. So that is just one example. But the most painful one for me, it will amaze you to know that a country of over 170 million people, because that is our population based on the last 2006 census that was conducted. You'll be surprised to see that the dominant religions in this country, that is Christianity, Islam, and the African traditional religion. you'll be surprised that there are some Muslims in this country that have never come in contact with a Christian. And there are some Christians that have never come in contact with a Muslim. So in the southern and eastern part of Nigeria, it's predominantly Christian, over 90%. And then you have here in the north, we have quite a huge number of Muslims and pockets of Christians in the north central states. So when we started encountering these interreligious challenges, we started a project to be able, Christians and Muslims, to begin to talk, the interfaith dialogue. And honestly, it was seriously resisted. Even myself as a person, I was called a lot of names. As a Christian, a lot of people also thought I had abandoned my Christian faith. Why should Christians be sitting on the same table with Muslims to dialogue? It was a very big challenge. So that was why we started in 2009. We started this Interfaith Dialogue Conference. It was actually a national program until 2010 when we expanded it to become an international conference, attracting other people from participants from other parts of the world. So even within the country here itself, there has been a high level of resistance. But what we have been very consistent on it. We've had the conference for 7 years consistently. And we also have in smaller groups where we have focus groups. We also focus on religious leaders, because when we found that level of resistance, we thought the best way to do was to get the religious leaders involved. And also, most importantly, government officials at different levels. And we identified few individuals who also bought into our own idea, and we recognized them publicly by giving them awards as interfaith ambassadors. So with that, they took the vision, and they also helped in opening doors for us. It's quite a huge challenge, especially presently with the issue of Boko Haram, when it started in 2009. That almost broke the country and brought the country down completely and set up a religious war between Christians and Muslims. So bringing Muslims and Christians together to talk, it appears the practitioners of the African traditional religions really have no problem. The challenge is between the Christians and the Muslims. So it's really a huge challenge even now. And especially when religious issues have been politicized, the politicians take advantage of the huge ignorance, because there is a high level of literacy and land, a high number of young people moving on the streets without education, and they are very vulnerable, and it's very easy for the politicians to take advantage, especially when they are looking for political religious card. Here we sleep, we eat, we dream, everything is about religion. So once a politician throws that religious card, people pick it up very easily, and you see violence on the streets on a daily basis.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Oh, wow. There are so many things in what you said that when I think about our North American context, we can really learn from. Even though, it's not, actually some states in the US, it is, corporal punishment is still allowed in schools, but it's culturally not as common as Nigeria. But what I heard you speaking about was changing the culture. And I think if we can think about what you shared in that context, what are the elements in our culture that we need to change, and then learn from what you did, which is to bring in the stakeholders and make that incremental change, and work with the youth to make that incremental change. And then what you were saying about, people not knowing each other, that is a similar issue that we face, and that many people on this call today are working towards in their community, is getting people to know each other, to meet each other, because when there is that lack of firsthand knowledge, it's very easy for wrong information to come in. So there's really a lot that we can learn from you. Again, if you have questions for Emmanuel or any of the other speakers, please put them in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and we'll ask them here in a couple of minutes. I want to go now to Marina and ask her to share about how do you work for peace in a society that is severely polarized, where there's so many divisions. And if you could tell us a story about a way that you are working creatively for peace and to put away fear in the midst of your current reality. Sorry, Maria, that was a really long question.
So, Marina, ahora te toca tu turno. Lo que estaba pidiendo Sari es cómo trabajas por la paz en un contexto que nos acabas de describir, y al mismo tiempo si tienes alguna historia de algo que hayas alcanzado o de que nos muestre cómo es este trabajo. Tienes que sacarte de... tenés muted. Sácate... Ahí está. Listo, perfecto.
Ok. Bueno, es bastante difícil porque está muy polarizada la situación.
So the work for peace is very difficult because society is very much polarized.
Actualmente, gracias a las grandes dificultades, los desafíos que hemos tenido con las últimas crisis de la comida y las medicinas.
Fortunately, because of the crisis we live in, because of food and medicine.
Sí, la gente se está dando cuenta que el poder está en uno mismo, en ayudarse los unos a los otros, cosa que no estaba pasando mucho en Venezuela.
People have discovered what a good thing is to help each other. This was not happening in the past in Venezuela, but now we are understanding that we need to help each other.
Y bueno, poco a poco se ha ido, no hemos superado todo, por supuesto, pero poco a poco, y una de las cosas que más, por ejemplo, a mí me ha funcionado y lo hago constantemente, es ponerme en el lugar de los demás, y sobre todo cuando uno se enfrenta a alguien que no piensa igual que uno.
So something that has been good for me, and I try to do it and to share this, is to put myself in the place of the other, especially when the other does not think or believe as you do. In that effort, we build this culture of peace.
Sí.
¿Tienes alguna historia que contar, Marina? ¿Un cuento, un relato?
Más que todo cuando me he encontrado con personas, sobre todo como aquí la polarización es a nivel político, no es
So
religioso.
here the polarization is not religious, but it is political. So when I meet someone that thinks politically differently that I do,
sí, trato siempre de dejarlo que hable y también respetar lo que la persona dice, aunque yo no estoy de acuerdo con él.
I allow the time for that person to express his ideas and respect them, even if I am not in acceptance of those, or if I don't think like he or she does.
Y explicarle que escuche mis razones o mi manera de pensar, y que se ponga también en mi lugar.
And I beg and I ask that person also to listen to what I'm saying, and that person is also capable of understanding my point of view, even if it is not in agreement.
Sí, por ejemplo, en el centro Zen, ahí va gente de todo tipo y que piensa de diferentes formas, ¿no?
So in the Zen Center, where I go daily, there are different people that think politically different.
Generalmente no permito que hablemos de política.
We try not to talk about the politics in the center.
Ha sido beneficioso, aunque es bastante difícil, ¿no?
It has been beneficial not to refer to political ideas in the center. It has been difficult.
Sí. No sé si después voy a volver a tener la oportunidad de hablar, ¿no? Para contar algo que va a pasar en Venezuela el 30 de abril.
So she is asking if she's going to have time to tell afterwards what is going to happen in Venezuela on April the 30th, or if she does it now, Sarah.
Why don't you share about that now, Marina?
Dice que lo compartas ahora, Marina. ¿Qué pasa el 30 de abril?
Bueno, todas las más de 40 diferentes tradiciones espirituales, religiosas y diferentes centros holísticos de sanación en Venezuela.
More than 40 religious organizations, holistic centers, and people of different religions in Venezuela.
Nos juntamos en febrero, en 3 días nos quedamos como encerrados en un sitio.
Gathered in a closed place for 3 days in February.
Y allí nos unimos para hacer un gran movimiento en Venezuela por un día de meditación por Venezuela que va a ser a las 9 de la mañana el domingo 30.
And so there we decided that we should call of a day of meditation, and this will start in the morning of April the 30th.
Hora de Caracas. Y vamos a estar no solamente en Caracas, sino en todo el país, y afortunadamente nos están apoyando personas inclusive de otros países, de otras corrientes, y en este momento, bueno, vamos a estar todo el día en diferentes actividades, todas por generar esa masa crítica que necesitamos.
So this gathering is trying to gather the critic mass in the city of Caracas, but also in other parts of Venezuela that would help the change, the spiritual power to do the change together.
Y bueno, vamos a estar también en otros países, y creo que esto va a ayudar mucho porque hay muchísima gente que cada vez, todos los días que estoy en este movimiento, en esta organización, veo como mucha gente está interesada en esto, ¿no? En que se están dando cuenta que, bueno, a través de la meditación y la oración, pues es un gran beneficio para las personas. Aquí hay mucho sufrimiento y mucho miedo, mucha incertidumbre.
So this Marina things would be an asset for the community. There's uncertainty, there's fear, and there's kind of a need to have this spiritual gathering, and she looks forward to that this will impact the society. This is not going to happen only in Venezuela, but also outside Venezuela, people gathering in meditation and prayer for peace in the country.
Thank you, Marina. And Marina, if you're able, if you can put a link in the chat to more information about that, others who are on the call can learn more about it. And
sí.
I think what's beautiful in what we've heard so far is both the spiritual and the practical, and how these need to work in complement to each other. As we do our work. So thank you for that.
Qué lindo, Marina, lo que compartes, esta unión de lo espiritual y lo práctico. Si tienes un link, puedes pasarlo por el chat para que la gente que esté escuchando también pueda unirse a esta meditación y a este movimiento.
Okay.
And I also just want to mention before we go to Sergio and Veronica again, something Marina said to me when we were meeting before this, and I asked her, what is it like to build peace in Venezuela? And she said, when you teach children peace and the government wants them to be soldiers, that is an act of resistance. And so I'm paraphrasing her words, but I thought that was such a powerful statement and really speaks to Marina's heart for her country and for giving that peace and those tools for peace to the next generation, and how that in and of itself, just the teaching of peace is resistance to non-peace. So Sergio and Veronica, you shared a little bit in the introduction about the Night of Religions, but I'm wondering if you can tell me more about how specifically this event is used to counter Islamophobia and anti-Semitism and anti-immigrant sentiment in your communities.
Yes, so I will answer to this. And I also would like to talk a bit later about bridge builders, because that's another project that we use to counter Islamophobia and anti-Semitism.
You can share about
because
both at the same time.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, so the Night of Religions, I already explained a little bit before what it means, briefly, what we do and what the purpose is. So we encourage people to go to the community, to the religious communities, to synagogues, to mosques specifically, and to temples to know about the religion. And as Sergio said before, Europe in general and Spain are very secular societies. So how do we get people to be interested in religion and know about different religion, and so counter prejudice and stereotypes? Well, we do it through the spiritual and the cultural side. That is to say that it's not just a day of open doors of religious communities. The various religious communities also offer different programs during the day, for example, concerts and talks, and a lot of different cultural activities, and also spiritual activities like meditations, rituals. And we noticed and we realized that people are very, very interested in this nowadays. People might not be so much interested in religion and find it something problematic that controls the people, but people are also very, very interested in the cultural side and in the spiritual side. They're more and more in search of a spiritual dimension. So, for example, the Buddhist tradition, many people are attracted to meditation because it's a way to connect to their own, it doesn't have to be God if they don't like this concept, but to connect with themselves and with nature and with the people and everything that surrounds them. So, you know, we get people to somehow face their own prejudices and their own stereotypes through a cultural offer. And but going back to the topic of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, of course, Jewish and Muslim communities participate in the Night of Religion, and we are very, very happy that this year, which is in which we will celebrate the second edition of the Night of Religions, all of the Jewish communities of Barcelona will participate. We have 4 Jewish communities in Barcelona. Last year, only the 2 Reform communities participated, but this year it will be the 4 of them. So we're very happy to be able to offer even more variety. We're very happy that the people will have the possibility to even know about Orthodox Judaism, because also the Orthodox community will participate. And another thing that we have in the Night of Religion is each year we offer the communities to address a certain topic. Last year it was the topic of women. What is the role of woman in that specific religious tradition? So that's also something that bothers a lot of people. For example, what is the role of women in Islam? It's very problematic. People are talking a lot in Europe about, you know, the scarf, why women in Islam wear the scarf. Are they somehow you know, like less than men, and so on and so forth. So we try to also let the communities talk about these topics. And this year the topic will be welcome and reception, because we were thinking of refugees coming. So what do these religious tradition have to say about welcoming the foreigner, the other? So of course religions have a lot to offer in this, and we would like people to know about this. Religions have a lot of wisdom to offer about these topics. So that's how we try to get people interested also in religions, and to you know, start to question their own ideas that they have in their head. And from the experience that we have last year, people really got to think of what, like, the ideas they had before attending certain activities in the Night of Religions and after. This really made people think, and is really enriching. As for the bridge builders, we have different groups. We have this year we have 4 groups: a communication group, a social group, an educational group, and the group that I coordinate is called Religious Diversity, and specifically our purpose is talking about the religion, the different religious traditions of the members of my group. And this year, I'm very happy to say that there will be also a Jewish girl, and I'm very, very happy about that, because we will give talks about all the religious tradition represented, and of course there is Judaism and Islam. And what we would like to do this year as well is going to schools and speak with children about Judaism and Islam, and you know, let young people, let children specifically, but also we will probably go to high schools, hopefully. So, like, answer all the questions that young people have and children have about Islam and Judaism, because of course there is a lot of, basically people don't know much about these religions. It's not just prejudice or stereotype, it's really a lot of ignorance, because that's the truth. People have a lot of very basic questions. So we want to go there and let them ask their questions. So this is what we are doing specifically, and I could talk even more, but now I will stop. Otherwise, otherwise we won't finish on time. Anyways.
Thanks, Veronica. And you can tell from all of these peace builders who are with us that they're passionate about their work, most definitely.
Yeah.
We have a time now to move into audience questions. I have a couple here, but please continue to send your questions if you have them. And then before we close, I'm going to ask the panelists also to speak about what helps them stay grounded in this work, and to avoid being burnt out and really being in it for the long haul. The question I have now, and this is to any of the panelists, so you choose if you would like to respond. It's from Colleen, and she says, in your experience, can space be created to talk openly and come together around why or on what basis we convene around peace? We often focus on the how before we gather around the why. The why is often getting rid of the conflict, but not deeper than that.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Yeah, so the question is about how do we convene people to really think about the why behind building peace. And have any of you found successful ways of having this conversation about the why? While Maria translates that into Spanish, does anybody else want to speak to this? No takers? Colleen, maybe if you can provide some additional clarification of your question, maybe we're not grasping it completely. And while you do that, I'll bring another question. Emmanuel, this one is to you specifically. And we have somebody asking about, there's some specific things about Nigeria in this question, but I want to actually take a broader question, which is often we hear when we're talking about countering violent extremism that it's people within that tradition that need to do the countering extremism. So there's people from within Islam who need to do this work to counter the extremism within Islam. Can you speak to that and your experience with that? Have you found that to be true? Emmanuel, you can speak now. Are you there?
Yes, sorry, maybe let me address. Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, let me address the question directly, and then I can give you example. I think with reference to Boko Haram specifically, I think there have been a lot of theories around this issue, beginning from the formation of the group itself and what the group has done up to this moment. And I really do not wish to go into the politics of the whole thing, because it creates more problems than the solutions we try to put to the table. But the truth of the matter, from my experience and understanding of what is happening, is that, you know, dialogue is key, listening is key. Now, there are a lot of people who have several grievances. And some of these people just need someone to listen to them. And once they have the impression that no one is listening to them, they resort to different strategies in order to draw the attention of who part young people by their leader Mohammed Yusuf in 2009. It was not even a violent group, but just like I said earlier, when religion is politicized, when politicians take advantage of this, what has led us to this. But we made a very big mistake initially, because this group of young people and their agitations were not properly managed. If that was properly managed, honestly, we would not have the kind of monster we have in our hands. Now, the question of whether Boko Haram is weak now, it has been downgraded. It's also a matter for the attacks. The way they will attack people in marketplaces, to attack government institutions openly, and to ride in long convoys on the streets, that has subdued them physically. What about the ideology itself? Can the ideology also be suppressed through physical attack by using guns? Because this group of people, they are no longer going openly as they used to do in the past, attacking people. But there have been pockets of attack here because they have resorted to suicide bombing. And a lot of people have been killed through that process also. Now, what do we do? How do we deal with the ideology that is not there because it's in their mind, and they are still recruit IDP camps? So to say that Boko Haram has weakened, I think we have to put it in context. That is very, very difficult. And there is another dimension to it also, because we have it by herdsmen. And a lot of people, because the manner in their farms has a lot of resemblance to the Boko Haram attacks, has transformed to herdsmen, because we have a lot of cases also where cattle, they have roasted a lot of cattle and taken over cattle belonging to Fulanis. And then they move from one place to another. Now, we are not sure whether it is the Fulanis who go up and down with their cattle, who are attacking people, are killing people, or it is the Boko Haram who have disguised themselves as Fulanis. So that is also another issue. The issue, I think this is needs to be resolved. My understanding is that whatever happens, key, if peace is not an option, peace is, I think some of the philosophers will even categorical imperative. We cannot live in this society relationship building. If we have to have peace in our society, we must build and strengthen relationships. Unfortunately, the governments cannot do that. There are certain things that the governments can do, but there are certain things that ordinary citizens like us can do, and that is building relationship. The responsibility of the government is to create the space, the enabling environment where citizens can put forward suggestions, that environment where people can maximize their potentials. So I think that is key. We have to deliberately, it is, like I said, it's not an option. That is the only thing we have to do, especially more and more on daily basis, dissatisfied, because there are a lot of things that people are not happy with. So creating that opportunity for people to dialogue, to sit, beginning one person at a time. If you have the opportunity to witness some of the things that are happening in our own part of the world, you see stories of what is happening even in South Africa, in different parts, especially West Africa. I sometimes lack the adjectives with which to describe the kind of situation, West Africa is one of the richest party of people that we have, but we seem to be overwhelmed by the level of challenges. I think
Brother Emmanuel, your line is breaking up a little bit. So I think we're starting to have some trouble hearing you. So if it's okay, you can pause for now. We'll come back to you in a minute. But I just want to summarize what I think I'm hearing you say, which is the role of peace builders is to create these spaces for conversations. There are certain things that the government is set up to do, and the government isn't set up to do this work. This is the work that is our imperative. It's our work to do, and that is to create these spaces for conversations. I want to make sure we get to some additional audience questions and our final question. So I know we're coming at around an hour. We'll continue on to answer questions. If people need to leave, please feel free to do so, but we'll stay here and we'll continue to ask questions and answer questions as long as people have questions. But I want, before the end of the hour, if briefly each of you could share, what is it that sustains you in doing this work? How do you stay grounded in yourself and not burn out while doing this work? If I could have Sergio, do you want to speak first to that, please?
Well, for me, it's very simple. It's only because I think we are getting a better world with this work, and you can realize that we are making this work, that people are getting more tolerance, are feeling better. We are approaching people, and I think that's very important for me. So it's only that. I mean, there are a lot of theoretical things that you can do with religion, but when you are in and you see that people that are very different, they meet and they dialogue and they can do important things together. I think that's very important. For me, that's the reason that makes me happy to work in this kind of job.
Thank you, Sergio. Veronica, what about you?
Well, I have to say I completely agree with Sergio. And personally, the fuel that keeps me going and keeps me very passionate about interfaith dialogue is that it's incredibly enriching for me personally to learn about so many different traditions, and it really gives me a lot of food on many levels: spiritual, cultural, intellectual. It feeds me on many levels, and for me it's incredibly enriching. All the wisdom that all these, simply diversity for me is a synonym for wisdom and enrichment. And I think for me it's also really rewarding to see how other people get a lot about this and are sometimes very surprised of how much they learned and how much they gained from learning from each other. And you know, when people go like, wow, I didn't know this, and that's so interesting, and wow, I didn't know that this and this is also true in that tradition, and that they do this. It's very good to know. And so for me it's incredibly rewarding, and we saw this with the Night of Religions. And another thing that I have to say is that I think we believe, and I believe a lot in the fact that we cannot live in fear. I think many people live in a lot of fear. They just rely and believe whatever they read in the news or whatever they get to know, rumors, and this generates a state of constant fear. And I don't think life, like, I don't think it is it's like it's good to live a life in fear. I think it's just the most terrible thing for everybody, for oneself and for society. So whatever we can do to just break these walls between us and try to get to know the others and realize that there's nothing to be afraid of. this is just a huge improvement of everybody's quality of life.
Yeah.
So these are all the things that I think are very, very important to keep in mind. Also, to answer the question about why we do these things, it's because we want to grow and we don't want to live in fear. We want to live a good life. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Veronica. It's so beautiful what both of you said is so much of what sustains you to do this work is the work itself, is that you find it, you know, propelling you forward, what you learn in it. I'm going to ask Emmanuel to answer next, and then Marina is going to answer, and then she's going to lead us in a closing meditation. And after she does that, we'll continue with the Q&A, but I want to provide us a wrap, like sort of a container for this portion, and then we'll continue answering questions. So Emmanuel, if you can briefly share what sustains you in doing this work?
Yeah, I think for me, three things actually keep me going. The first one is hope. Darkness, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. So I've made a personal decision long time ago not to allow myself to be discouraged or overwhelmed by the darkness around me. Just like the moral imagination, even though I'm deeply rooted in the circumstances that surround me, I'm very, very hopeful that tomorrow will always be better. The second thing is really children and young people. When I find myself around children and young people, I get a lot of inspiration and positive energy to be able to continue doing this work. And the third and the most important one for me is God, my faith. I think I have worked all my life with God. My mom, when my father died, when I was just a little kid, my mom taught me and the rest of us nothing less but God. And I hold that so dearly. And then the work we do, my mom will always say, do your work as if your entire life depends on the work, and pray as if your entire life depends on the prayer. So these three things really keep me moving.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And Marina, I hand it to you to both answer the question and then to lead us in our meditation.
Marina, ahora entonces compartes con nosotros qué es lo que te sostiene a ti en el trabajo que estás haciendo y al mismo tiempo y después nos vas a guiar en la meditación para terminar, poder hacer un final para los que se tienen que ir.
Ok. Bueno, una de las cosas que más me ha sostenido es mi práctica, la práctica del budismo, la práctica y sobre todo la práctica de la compasión.
For me, something that had, pero un minuto, Marina. For me, what has always sustained me is my practice, the practice of Buddhism, and also the practice of compassion.
Y conociendo otras religiones y conociendo personas de otra que piensan diferente a mí, también me he dado cuenta que todos los seres queremos estar bien, felices y en paz.
And having met many people of different religions, I have learned that all of us want to be in peace and be happy.
Y creo que eso es una de las cosas que trato de hacer todos los días.
What I try to do every day is
enviarle amor incondicional a todos. Y esa es la
send
meditación.
unconditional love to everyone.
Y esa es la meditación que quería, o la oración con la que quería cerrar ahora.
And this is the meditation I wanted to close this call with.
Podemos comenzar, ¿no?
Can we start, Sari? Good.
Simplemente cierren los ojos y respiren profundamente.
I ask that you close your eyes and that you breathe slowly, peacefully.
Y enfoquen toda su energía en su corazón.
And focus all your energy in your heart.
Traten de sentir algo que los hizo muy felices y les hizo sentir mucho amor.
try to think of something that helped you, made you very happy and helped you feeling a lot of love.
Y eso vamos a hacer como si le enviáramos esa energía de amor o de luz, como lo quieran ver, a todos los seres.
And we will try to send this energy of light or love, as you want to see it, to all creatures.
Ajá, rodeándonos primero nosotros de pensamientos afectuosos hacia nosotros.
First of all, we are going to have our heart full of affectionate sentiments for ourselves.
Y también enviar esos pensamientos a todos los demás y los voy a ir diciendo y ustedes mentalmente los pueden ir repitiendo.
And also have these sentiments for other people. I'm going to name all these sentiments, and you are going to try and send these to other people while I'm speaking about them.
Que todos los seres sean felices, alegres y realizados.
That all creatures are happy, content, and feel they realize what they are up to.
Que todos los seres sean sanados y plenos.
That all the creatures are healed and full.
Que todos puedan poseer lo que desean y necesitan.
That all the beings can possess what they need.
Que todos los seres sean protegidos de daño y libres de temor.
That all the beings are protected of harm and free of fright.
Que todos los seres gocen de la paz y la tranquilidad interior.
That all beings enjoy interior peace.
Que todos los seres sean despertados, liberados.
That all beings are awakened, freed.
Que haya paz en este mundo y en todo el universo.
That there is peace in this world and in the whole universe.
Que todos los seres sean felices y libres de sufrimiento y de las causas de su sufrimiento.
That all beings are happy and free of suffering and the causes that cause suffering in them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. What a way to close this portion of our time together in sending those thoughts and prayers and energy to all the world, to everything that we are working for, that we wish that for everybody and every living thing. Thank you, Marina. If people need to leave, I fully understand, but we're going to keep answering a few questions while we have our panelists with us, because we do have more questions here. So I'm glad that we can continue to answer them. One practical question for Sergio and Veronica, just about the Night of Religions. Can you say how long it has been happening for, and you do it how often? I think it's every year, but if you could.
Sorry. Night of Religion was first celebrated in Berlin 6 years ago, and in Barcelona last year was the first time. So I think he also asked about the importance of the night, and I think the most important thing is that we approach the people from the city to the diversity of the city, and I think it's also important that the religious communities got involved in the interfaith dialogue. That was a way to involve these people. I think that's important also.
Thank you. Yes, you're right. He also did ask about how it's changed Barcelona.
I find I find that it has changed the religious communities as they are involving more in interfaith dialogue, and it also shows the way that Barcelona has changed the last 50 years. For example, last year the Night of Religion was the most important religious event in Barcelona, and for example, 50 years ago, the most important activity was an Eucharistic meeting from the Catholic Church. So last year it was very different. An interfaith activity was the most important thing in the religious panorama.
That's great. That's really incredible. I have another, or Veronica, do you want to say anything in addition to that before we go? No, okay. So I have another question here. What are the experiences of inclusion of religion and their equality in the classroom or school environment, especially when there is separation between education and religious instruction? So Emmanuel, I think maybe you're the best to start answering this question, and then we'll come maybe to you, Marina. But can you talk about how you've done this inclusion of religion and equality in the classroom or in the school environment?
Some background from our national policy on education that can help to clarify a lot. Because the way religion creates even further complications. If we look at the document which clarifies what we call a national policy on education in terms of the learning domains, there are basically three learning domains: the cognitive domain, the psychomotor, and the affective domain. The cognitive domain basically has to do with knowledge, cognition. And as students are subjected in the classroom for so long, trying to grab content from textbooks and from the chalkboard into their heads, and then give back that to their teachers during exams. And that has another problem in our educational system. And for me, I even call it the literacy system. And that's the reason why I do that. And the second domain is the affective domain. But honestly, this is the one that is completely ignored. And then the psychomotor. There is some aspect of physical education that is taught in schools, but the affective domain, which has to do with the cultivation or the qualities of the heart, nothing is done about that. Even from universities, they are presented with certificates, and you hear they are told that this has been found worthy in knowledge and character, and then that is a lie in itself. We should be saying that unworthy knowledge, because that nothing is done in heart in terms of compassion, the heart, the physical heart, where those.
Brother Emmanuel, your line is really breaking up right now. Oh, and there we lost him. Oh, okay. I know he had a power outage, so maybe either his generator stopped or something happened with his internet connection, but we'll see if he's able to rejoin us. Sorry for that abrupt end there. Marina, can you speak about how you have used and worked in the education system and spreading peace?
Marina, pregunta Sari, ¿cómo has trabajado en el sistema educativo en culturas de paz?
Sí, tenemos el Círculo de Cooperación para el Diálogo, tenemos un programa que se llama Niños en un Mundo de Paz.
So the Cooperation Circle has a program that is called Children in a World of Peace.
En donde le enseñamos a jóvenes en valores.
And we teach values to youth also.
Y meditación. Y ellos van a diferentes escuelas a dárselo a los niños pequeños. Ellos
So
son
we,
de la universidad.
so the university students are, first of all, receive values and work on that. And then it is them that go to schools to pass that to children. So they train trainers, right?
Sí. Y con juegos, con actividades, aprenden los niños a valores, también a meditar, a dibujar mandalas, que ha sido como un éxito en el programa, ¿no? Los niños les gusta eso. Y lo damos a diferentes personas de diferentes religiones.
So these youth design different programs, games, and even art. One of the programs had design of mandalas, and this was kind of very successful program that these youth give to children of schools in different areas and of different religions.
Y los niños son muy receptivos.
And we know that children are very open. And you know that children don't have this dual feeling of adults that they say something and they do some other things. So teaching children is so important.
Thank you, Marina. I'm wondering also if, is there any opposition to, so for example, in the United States, we have a pretty strong barrier between the government and anything religious. And so in many schools here, it's seen as being difficult to do this kind of education. I do know that some organizations in the United States, some that are affiliated with URI, do this education by using the golden rule and not actually talking specifically about a specific religion, but about the golden rule or about peace. But I'm just wondering if you faced any opposition from the government, or
Marina,
and how you've worked with that.
Pregunta si tenés alguna oposición de parte del gobierno. Cuenta que en Estados Unidos es a veces un desafío para que se lleve a las escuelas temas que tienen que acabar con lo religioso y es más fácil trabajarlo, por ejemplo, a través de la regla de oro. ¿Has tenido experiencia de dificultad respecto del gobierno, de estos talleres que ustedes hacen, o cuál es tu experiencia?
Bueno, casi siempre se hace y no se habla de una religión en específico, sino como...
So when we do these workshops, we don't usually speak about a specific religion.
Pero sí hay cierta resistencia porque el sistema educativo lo ha cambiado mucho el gobierno. Sobre todo
in the late years, there has been kind of a growing resistance because education has changed quite a bit with the new political arena.
En los colegios privados no ha habido mucho problema.
We don't have problems in presenting this in private schools.
Y en los colegios públicos quizás hay que presentárselo como algo como de ayuda para estudiar los niños, o sea, sin ningún tinte religioso.
So when presenting this in public schools, this is presented as something that helps students to do their work better rather than having a religious affair behind. Mm-hmm. So we don't refer to the religious aspect of this, but helping the kids to be good at school and work well.
Pero ya se ha comprobado, sobre todo recientemente en una escuela en un lugar muy violento, en una zona pobre, que los niños están meditando temprano en el primer momento de que llegan a la escuela y han bajado mucho los índices de violencia.
So there has been an impact in schools where meditation is done early in the morning before they start. And this vulnerable and violent school has a lot of transformation because of this incorporation of meditation at the beginning of the day.
That's great. That's really wonderful. And I love the creativity in the way we're sharing about it, which is that it doesn't have to be about a specific religion, but it's about empowering the children to be better students. I want to share, Emmanuel has been typing me part of his answer since we were having a little trouble with his line. I'm just going to share what he said, which was that he's trying to explain that we have a basic challenge with our education system that focuses more on the cognitive domain and the psychomotor domain, but completely ignores the affective domain. He also said that there's also a challenge in how religious education is taught in Nigerian schools, that you have Muslim students who are studying Islamic studies separately, while Christian students are studying Christian education, and this denies the young people the opportunity of studying together and having a better understanding of the other. So that is a challenge that they're having as well. Veronica, I see you're saying some things in the chat here. Do you want to speak to this question as well about in the education system?
Well, there's a lot to say. No, I mean, because somebody mentioned Kids for Peace, which is a project of kids, Jewish and Muslim kids in Israel. So I answered that I've done an experience working in village, a Jewish Arabic village in Israel called Neve Shalom Wahat Salam, which means the oasis of peace. And there they founded one of the first, or I think it's one of the only binational bilingual primary schools in Israel, where children actually not only learn Arabic and Hebrew, but they learn about the holidays and also the commemorations of both people, meaning they speak together, they speak all together about Independence Day, Holocaust Day, the Nakba. They do it all together and they discuss this, and I think obviously it's great, and it's the only school in Israel that has that, which is pretty amazing. I think there is another one in Jerusalem called Hand in Hand, but that's it, because it's a separate system. Seriously, so it really reminds me, it makes me, I thought of this because because of what I heard from Emmanuel, so it's very similar, this division. Anyways, I wanted to say that,
and I was sorry, and I was telling Veronica that recently in March, Kids for Peace has joined URI as a cooperation circle for the multi-region.
Yes, a big welcome to Kids for Peace.
Great.
Yeah,
that's great. So yeah, we do think it's really crucial to work with children. So that's why one of the projects in the Bridge Builders project, I mean, one of the groups of the Bridge Builder project is focused on working with children, which is actually Sergio's group. They I don't know if you know what forum theater is. I'm not sure it's the correct word in English. It's like very short sketches in which you are representing a situation of discrimination and bullying at school, and then you invite the public to intervene in the situation. You know, there is like it's an interaction between the public and the actors. The children are invited to interrupt the situation of discrimination and so on, or whatever is represented, and to give an alternative, to offer an alternative to what is being represented there. Of course, I mean, what Sergio and his group represented were situations in which children are discriminated at school or bullied at school and are victims of, you know, violence, verbal violence or physical violence. So the children were invited to interrupt this scene and offer an alternative scenario in which, I mean, Sergio might be able to give a few examples of how children participated, and that is of course great, because you invite children to offer a different scenario, an alternative, a positive, you know. positive alternative. And then, of course, my group as well, we want to now start to go to schools. And again, Berlin inspired me a lot because I don't know if you know about a project called Salam Shalom Initiative in Berlin. It's not just young people, but it's founded and coordinated by young people. And they it was founded as a dialogue group for Muslims and Jews. To like their main slogan is that Jews and Muslims are not enemies. As you know, the news and let's say the media tend to, the image that the media tend to give is that, you know, there is this situation in Israel Palestine, and therefore, you know, there is this this kind of conflict between Jews and Arabs all over the world, but they say no to this. So they do really a lot to counter this image, and they go to schools a lot. They go like usually they go in pairs, one Muslim member of the initiative and a Jewish member. They go to schools, they go to primary schools, they go to high schools, and they talk about Judaism, they talk about Islam, and they talk about the relationship between the two people and the two religions. And I mean, it just a few examples of interventions at schools, which is of course very, very important, because of course, especially children, they hear a lot from grown-ups, from their parents, from society, and they don't have tools to deal with these prejudices. So somebody has to especially give them the answers, provide them the answers, provide them the information. It doesn't, it cannot come only from you know, from what they hear, and nobody explains it thoroughly to them. And so I think it's really, really important. Well, these are just a few examples.
Thanks, Veronica. And just briefly, I want us to thank Brother Emmanuel. He needs to go turn off his generator, which he's been using to join us today. So thank you, Brother Emmanuel, for being with us as long as you could. And we will let you leave now and do what you need to do at home. It's getting quite late over there. Thanks, Brother Emmanuel. But just going back to what Veronica was saying, I think that we've really hit on something, because now for about 15 minutes we've been talking just about education and peace and how we can instill that in children from a young age. And I wonder, you know, if we should see the blessing in the educational system and a system with a huge structure, and how can we as peace builders utilize that to bring peace. I know here in the US, one of our cooperation circles is called the World Religion and Tolerance Society, and it's a group of high school students led by themselves. They organize their events. They have a teacher who's sort of the group's mentor, and they do activities together, either as a group. At one point, they were bringing in speakers from local houses of worship. Then the school made it difficult to make that happen, so they've adjusted, and now they go to other programs happening in the community. But even when it's not possible because of the structure and the policy for outsiders, those of us who aren't students, to come in and teach, we've seen students taking that leadership, which is really beautiful, and starting clubs within the school structure. So that's really cool. Sergio, did you want to speak at all about the skits that, that's the word I would use, Veronica, the short skits that Veronica was talking about for interrupting hatred?
You mean for the Seattle Forum?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the experience is, I think, it's quite good, because children, when they act and they see things that are not good, they try to keep them well. So it's a very good experience. And here in Catalonia, it's not a very common activity. I mean, you have a lot of Catholic schools, and you have secular schools, and religion is not normally explained in schools. You can study Catholic religion, but other religions are not well studied. So doing that, we are opening a door, we say, and it's a way that children meet different religions. and we have a lot of children from a lot of countries, so we have a lot of immigration, and normally the religion keeps a little bit covered. It's not shown, so they don't know the religion of all the children. It's supposed that it's something that you have to keep in your private life, and it's a way just to open. We all the activities that we try to do is just to open and to know religion. That is something that is not very well tolerated nowadays in our society.
Thanks, Sergio. It's also reminding me, I found out yesterday from one of our CCs, the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County, they're doing a program called Diffusing Hatred. And it's not in schools, but it's in different houses of worship, churches, mosques, synagogues, where they're teaching nonviolent communication and then also how to interrupt situations of hatred, and kind of similar to what you're talking about. So that's great. Kia on our chat here said, business also has a role to support the process of peace. Peace is required for prosperity and economic stability. Kia, I would agree. We all have a part to play in peace from every sector of society. So this is a really important point that you make. I'd like to hear from each of you, if what is, Veronica, you answered this a little bit ago, but from others, I mean, why do you do this work, and what do you see that ties together? You know, we've talked about so many different ways that we do this work. What's tying it all together for you, and why do you do this work? Sorry, who should go first? Sergio, can you go first? You're on. There you go.
Sorry, I have a request from Marina. So her mother, which is something good to know and to even value more that Marina is here. Her mother, because of the water in Caracas, is not very healthy. Was in hospital, and she was called a minute ago saying that she has to go and look for her mother because she's better, which is good.
Yes.
But Marina will need to leave soon, so she's asking how much this is going to take.
Yes, I totally understand. I've kept you guys longer. Well, Marina, I'm glad that your mom is ready to come out from the hospital. Maybe if you want to just answer briefly, why do you do this work, and what do you see that ties it all together? And then we'll say our goodbyes, and you can be on your way.
Marina, entonces, ya que primero que se alegra mucho que tu mamá ya esté mejor, que pueda salir del hospital, pero al mismo tiempo que, para terminar, ¿qué es lo que mueve tu corazón para hacer el trabajo que estás haciendo y que puedes unir en tu vida con este trabajo de construcción de la paz? Tenés que sacar el mudo.
Creo que ver cómo mis hermanos venezolanos, cómo se ha deteriorado esta sociedad, creo que eso es una de las cosas que me mantiene aquí y trabajando, porque mucha gente se está yendo.
So one thing that keeps me here, and she underlines that because many persons are leaving Venezuela, is seeing how deteriorated society is, and she wants to give a contribution. So that's why she keeps there and doing things.
Creo que mi compromiso como budista me ha ayudado a eso, y creo que el universo conspiró para que yo fuera budista y pudiera estar aquí y ahora en esta situación que está viviendo mi país, y poner lo mejor de mí.
My commitment as a Buddhist, I think, was to prepare me for the situation we are living, so that as a Buddhist today and now, I can give this contribution to the rest of the Venezuelan society.
Y bueno, trato de dar lo mejor que pueda de mí todos los días.
I try to give the most of me every day.
Well, and you are doing that now today, as you're here with us rather than with your mother. So thank you so much for being with us. And I've shared in the chat box the Instagram for the Venezuela meditation that Marina is working on, if anybody is interested in finding out more information.
Sari dice que estás haciendo eso justamente ahora, dando lo mejor de ti, y te agradece que lo hayas hecho en este momento con la dificultad de tu mamá, y que mandó el Meditadores de Venezuela para que puedan unirse las personas que participan en esta webinar.
Sí, gracias, y los invito a unirse el 30 de abril. No, va a ser todos los meses, pero el primero va a ser el 30 de abril. Muchas gracias por la invitación y espero que los haya ayudado en algo. Y estoy a la orden siempre.
She is thankful, she is at our disposition, and she invites everybody to participate in this monthly meditation, but especially on the 30th when the meditation starts.
Gracias, Verónica, Sergio, María Eugenia.
Thank you. Thanks so
Adiós,
much.
Marina.
Adiós, gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Disculpen que me voy.
Before we go, Sergio, do you want to answer this question about why you do the work?
Well, more or less the same thing than Marina. I think it's just to make a better world, a better society, and giving the best of me. And I think that's the reason.
Yeah. Well, with that, we will close our time together. And just thanks to everybody who stayed on even beyond the time that we allotted for this, 40 minutes beyond. So you can tell that it's good stuff when we're here for this long. So thank you to our panelists and to Maria for the translation. Thank you to the Charter for Compassion, whose account we are using to host this webinar. Thank you. We've been Facebook live streaming this webinar. We'll also send out the link to anyone who registered for the call, along with the contact information for our panelists who have graciously agreed to be contacted by you if you have follow-up questions. I see somebody here wants to know more about the mandalas that Marina was talking about. And so I'll provide you with their contact information, as well as a survey about the webinar today that will help us create future webinars, so we know what topics you want to hear about and the format and all of that. Thank you so much for your time with us today. If you are interested in learning more about United Religions Initiative and how you can get involved, I welcome you to email me. My email is sari, S-A-R-I, @uri.org, and we would love to welcome you into the URI family. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.